Hello, and today we're going to look at Cold Knap Lake using the SMILE method, and also hopefully link the themes in the poems to other poems in the anthology by Seamus Heaney and in the pre-1914 Poetry Bank. On first glance, the poem doesn't seem to have any regular pattern to it at all. However, if you look closely, you can see that the first verse and the third verse are 4 lines, while the second verse and the fourth verse of 5, finishing with a rhyming couplet at the end. So it actually does have quite a regular scheme to it. That means that there's a purpose to the poem, and we have to investigate a bit more deeply. Gillian Clarke doesn't tend to rely on rhyme, even though this poem has a rhyming couplet at the end. And what she tends to use is enjambment and caesura for an effect. So the enjambment there is right from the beginning, where we can see this seamless idea of a panicking crowd as they go down to pull apparently a drowned child from the lake. And there we're stopped and asked to consider that image. Mostly the poem relies on end-stop lines, the idea of one line stopping and you looking at that line and focusing on it as a set image. But here we have a caesura in the middle of the line where we've asked to consider the word a heroine, and also the actual head of the heroine over the face of the girl, breathing life back into her, and this is Gillian Clarke's mother. And from then on the images move again, particularly in the third stanza, reflecting the first stanza of a enjambment as lines move from one thing into the other and images build up. The use of this technique is to build up a series of powerful images that describe the shocking event of a girl appearing to be dead but being brought back to life by the poet's mother. As the poem goes on, however, the poem becomes more mysterious and looks into the idea of memory and whether we can actually trust it. And Gillian Clarke, again, in like many of her other poems and poems by Seamus Heaney, links memory to nature. And so, was it really true? Did the girl survive? Was she drowned? Or did she actually get sucked down into the river and become part of the nature around her? This leads us to different images, but the first image, of course, is one of death. The idea that the girl is actually soaked in water and is dying. She's blue-lipped. We have that really powerful adjective there, and making us focus on whether she's going to survive. So there's a drama in the poem. Then we have the mother breathing life back into her, and then there's a twist in the tale of the poem. The girl being brought back to life isn't the end of the story. We aren't happy with it, because by the third stanza we find out that she went home and that she's a poor girl, and that linked into her father's behaviour, and that she is actually thrashed for almost drowning, the only way the father can actually describe his feelings towards her, which is quite sad and turns our emotions upside down and makes us feel quite ambivalent. We're not sure whether to be happy or sad about the events in the poem. This then goes on to the language, where the language of the poem is quite interesting, because what happens most of the way through the poem, we have this idea of the past tense. Now this is looking at grammar, making us think about the memories of the poet. Everything ending in ed there. Then we move into certain parts where things become present tense, particularly when we're looking at this idea of nature and maybe the girl being swallowed by nature. And we have in the last 2 lines the present tense here: all things lost lie under closing water, in that lake the poor man's daughter. And it's almost like the idea that the memory is haunting the poet even up to the present. So the things move from the past to the present, and the present is the thing that dominates. Strange living past for the poet. And we have all these interesting adjectives that create a mystery, shadowy and satiny. And we've got these ideas of rosiness in the cheeks as the girl comes back to life. So adjectives are used for quite a powerful effect. And then finally, this use of the question, was I there? This brings about the effect of the poem, which is talking about the nature of memory itself, a bit like Heaney's follower and digging. There's this idea of whether the events were really actually true. And this asks the reader to think about Clarke's views on the past. Does she trust herself? Can we trust ourselves when we think about past events, particularly shocking ones? So the overall feeling then at the end of the poem is one where we've had this very impressive event causing major distress to people around them, particularly to the poet as a young girl who witnessed this event. And Gillian Clarke on her website talks about actually witnessing this event, but still thinking back on it, and when she turns it into language and poetry, not being sure. And she's asking her readers, can you really be sure that when you explain what happened in the past, if it was a particular event which you thought about a lot, can we actually truly say that's what happened?